Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another We the People presented by the Diamond Factory. As most of you know, the Diamond Factory .org is our home page. You can go there. We're still under construction. We're trying to get our business directory together so we can be more efficient on telling people where to go to get the necessary services. But in the meantime, you can subscribe and donate to our station right here on YouTube. Our Cash App is $JEKII. And all proceeds go toward keeping us on the air. Tonight, we're going to talk about a subject that a lot of us really don't want to face. A lot of us may think of it as being crass or selfish, belligerent. A lot of things you might want to call it, but unless you have really confronted it, I guess maybe it is very frightening to think that this part of you exists. So tonight we're going to consult what I would consider an expert, uh, Mr. Leslie Hall. He has, along with being a musician, he has also talked extensively about this field. So let's get Leslie up here first. How are you doing this evening?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, James. I don't know about that the expert part of it, but we'll roll with it and see.
Well, hey, uh, being an expert nowadays, I guess maybe it might not seem to have as much uh, quality as it used to, but nowadays with all the technology and everything we have, we can all become experts. Uh, you know, and,
That's
uh,
right.
and not only that, I think if you're not an expert yourself, the knowledge that you're presenting is expert knowledge. So therefore,
Well, I appreciate that, man.
yeah.
If being an expert means I can talk about it at length, then I might qualify.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, man. You said it in the intro. I'm a musician. I'm from way lower Alabama. Everybody around here claims to be the real LA. But I'm just north of Gulf Shores, Alabama, and it is hot down here and humid, and we're having afternoon thunderstorms every day now. It's just another, it's summertime again down here. Um, but I love it. I love it down here. But I spend as much time as I can down here. A lot of time I spend on the road these days, all over the United States. Just got back from Australia. We're headed to Europe in the fall. Well, late August or so. So I'm just happy to be home for a little bit and happy I had some time to talk to you, man.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Because when I saw you on podcast, I said this is something that uh, a lot of veterans, such as myself, we know about this uh, type of uh, inner animal. We know, or we have faced it. Some of us unsuccessfully. That's why we probably have right in the order of 22 veterans a day that commit suicide. And if you're not equipped to handle that inner animal, it can be debilitating. I still, like now, I came home in 1971. I still have night sweats. I still have to go back to anger management in order to use the tools effectively that I know to keep that in check. So, why don't you give us a little bit about the uh, since you spent so many years, interfacing with thousands of people, what early experiences on tour first made you curious about our inner animal?
Well, I'll tell you, man, it was kind of a perfect storm. When I moved to Nashville, I moved there with the girl I thought I was going to marry. And then after that first year's lease was up, she stayed on that side of town and I moved to the other side of town. And that was the original crack in my belief system. I was born into a family, fortunately born into a family that once you chose your mate, you got married and you stayed together. You worked it out, and no matter what it was, you learned to compromise and you learned to move forward. You just worked it out. My grandparents, I think this year, my grandfather passed in 21. I think my grandparents would have been married 71 years this year if he was still with us. My parents were well into their 30s when my dad passed. So I believe that once you chose your mate, you worked it out, and then all of a sudden I had chosen my mate, but it wasn't working out, and there was no argument I could present to get the outcome that I thought should be true. And over the next year of dealing with that realization that just because I believe this to be true and doesn't mean it's true because it's very obviously not true. Um, I kind of set aside what I thought I might know of the world and just started observing. I had been the guy that had zero success with women to a guy that had ultimate success with women, back to a guy that was having zero success with women again. And I'm trying to figure out how is that possible. And so for the next few years, man, I was just kind of sitting on my perch. I was playing downtown Nashville in the Broadway tourist district for quite a long time. And I would go just sit on my perch and entertain all these people that had come to Nashville for a little musical vacation. And I would get to know quite a bit of them. They would come back year after year, conference after conference, whatever the case was. And they would come back and see me. And Nashville was beautiful in the fact that it gave me legitimate friends all over the country and all over the world. And now that I'm touring, I can call them up and say, I'm going to be in your town. Why don't you come be my guest? That sort of thing. So definitely grateful for that. But I didn't know I was in a new city. I didn't have all the social um, karma that I had built up down here. I was brand new and it didn't matter that I was there or if I wasn't there. Everything that made me special in my hometown made me just another douchebag in Nashville, Tennessee. Everybody's there trying to play some music and get famous. So I just kind of sat back and observed because I clearly don't know exactly what's happening here. Let me just pay attention. So um, it was in that bar one night. I used to play at a bar called Swinging Doors Saloon in downtown Nashville. I used to make a living playing classic rock and funk and soul and 90s hip hop and grunge and post grunge stuff in the middle of Nashville. I was the rock and roll guy. And I just finished up a set one night and I was sitting at the bar. We would all wait to congregate and we'd all kind of walk to the garage in groups, just for safety type of thing. So I was sitting back there waiting on some other folks to get done. And this dude came in and I noticed he was a little meek, kind of his body language was a little slumped over and he was sitting by himself, wasn't talking to anybody else. So I'm just sitting there just observing, just like I normally do. And he's flipping through his phone, and the bartender, who's a friend of mine, comes over, and he puts his phone up, and he's showing her what I assume is pictures. And so I just see this interaction. She goes on, gets him his drink. The manager comes out a little bit after that, and same thing, goes through the pictures or whatever. And so when it was all said and done, he finished his beer and he got up and walked out. And shortly after that, the manager and the bartender came over and I asked him, I said, what was that interchange about? And they said that we'll call this guy Cody for sake of storytelling purposes. They said that Cody is a semi-regular. They come in once or twice a week and that he works at McDonald's, but he's an aspiring chef. And I said, well, what did he show you on his phone? And it was a dessert that he had made. And, he shows them and they say, oh man, you made that. That's amazing. That's good. Congratulations, man. You're on your way type of thing. And, then he finishes his beer and he leaves. And I said, so you mean to tell me that he just come in here, rolled over and got his belly scratched and then went on about his way, wagging his tail? And they said, yeah, I guess that's kind of what happened. And
Yeah.
that was the first thought that I ever had towards, man. I ended up telling my two friends there, I said, man, if I took every dude I've ever known and every dog I've ever known, I bet you I can find a 1-to-1 personality match in that group. And that was the first idea that I ever had about us really behaving as animals in this world. Um, and that kind of spurred the thought. And then it was really, I was dealing with having been ghosted by a woman that I had some interaction with that I was really attracted to. And all of a sudden she wasn't there anymore. And I didn't know how to handle that. It was brand new to me. It was the first time it ever happened. So I thought about it for a bit, and I finally texted her and I said, I can tell you're ghosting right now, and that's okay. If I know you're in a weird place, if you get to a better place in the future, holler at me then. And she immediately said thank you after a few days of no kind of communication. And I thought maybe I've cracked this code, and that was the thought that sent me onto the. I thought, I wonder if anybody else has figured this out yet, or maybe I've cracked the code. I need to tell all the other dudes about. Um, and that was a rabbit hole that I didn't know was there. I went from men's coaches to TED Talks to talks on the Bible to psychology to feminists to pickup game to evolutionary biology. And I was just thinking about everything I was learning and reading about and listening to. And it just dawned on me one day that when I recognize myself as an animal, I can make much more sense of my behavior. And then I realized when I think of everyone else as an animal, it makes a lot more sense. And then I think about society and the things that we do as animals and humans, and that makes a lot more sense. And it kept scaling and scaling and scaling. And so I thought, maybe I'm on to something here. So for the next little bit, I would look at the world through that lens, through that perspective. And it just started everything, just a real clarity. I could understand why I had done things that were totally against my best interest, or how someone else could do that, or how I could, make a choice that was clearly not good for me, um, and how others could do that too. And so I started telling some of my friends and family about, hey, I've started to think this way, and it's really making life a lot easier. I don't take myself nearly as seriously anymore. And, it's difficult, if not impossible, to hurt my feelings all of a sudden, and I haven't been angry in a year and a half now, and all that sort of stuff. And there at the bar, I was kind of the voice of reason that everybody would come to when they were having their relationship troubles, or troubles with a family member or something. Like, they would pretty much run to me to see how do I deal with this. And so I started to use this particular language, about, hey, think about, there's an animal in here too, animal and a human, and they're fighting over control for who's driving the car. Um, in 2019, I was thinking, what month in 2020 could I possibly take off to try to write this down? Because it was becoming, quite frankly, it was becoming a nuisance to have to take someone from mile 0 to mile 15 just so I could use the language that I wanted to explain things in. So that's what made me start thinking about writing it down. And how do I write it down? I've never in my life thought of writing a book. So how do you even go about doing that sort of thing? So in 2019, into 2019, I was contemplating, do I take a month off in 2020 to try to write this down? And then COVID happened. And I went from playing 7 days a week in Nashville, Tennessee, to not having a gig anymore. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to be able to work, then I have to, I'm never going to, hopefully I'll never have an opportunity like this again. So let me try to take advantage of it. And so I just squirreled myself away in my apartment there in Nashville and got to writing. And to my surprise, was able to do it.
Now, was the fact that you were already in the entertainment business, did that kind of help you? I mean, one of the things about writing a book, we all have that book within us. At least I believe that we do. But you know, how do I get it out to people that need it? Without sometimes without having to invest a fortune, self-publishing, things like that. So how did you get from well, okay, I have time now. It's COVID. You know, were you able to uh, use your skills as an entertainer in order to help you not only write your book but also to get your book out to the people that needed to read it?
There was quite a bit of symbiosis. So the first thing I did was kind of created an outline for what order I wanted to say things in, what was important to me. Like first of all, I have to give the reader the back story, to take them from our common conception of what an animal is to what an animal actually is if you peel back a layer, you know. And because I walk them through my thought process to get them to the revelation of, oh, wait a minute, I'm an animal too, you know. So I did that, and then I told my particular story and of this dark time in my life that led me to search outside my own comfort zone for an answer on how to proceed, you know. Um, and then some spaces in the world that I see it most prevalently. There's a chapter in there on double standards. There's a chapter in there on hate and why it remains so prevalent in our world. And then I thought it was important to show the human animal relationship in the world of relationships and dating and attraction and all that sort of stuff. Because one thing that I've realized is it's a different experience in this world, uh, being a man versus being a woman, or being masculine versus being feminine. And we don't appreciate that, I don't think, as a default setting. And so what I'd hoped to do was help women understand the masculine animal further and help men understand the feminine animal further, so that hopefully it would make the communication between the two more effective and more precise, because I'd seen how it had worked in my personal life, and then the personal lives of those around me that I was able to share this with. Um, and so it turns out, man, writing the book was the easy part. The getting it out to the people that might need it has been far more difficult for me. One thing that I was able to do really easily, talking about symbiosis between the music industry and now writing a book, was as soon as I finished it, I went straight to recording an audio book. And I was doing that right there in my apartment in Nashville. You know, I had a really nice interface and a nice condenser microphone that I could do the work on. I had my apartment was treated with some sound panels for recording and stuff like that. And so that was a real space of symbiosis there. Um, and so then I had a manuscript and an audio book that I had no idea what to do with. And so in 21, I started looking for resources for authors, and I found a couple. I didn't know if I wanted to self-publish or if I wanted to seek a traditional publishing deal. So that research took me a little while to figure out exactly which direction I wanted to go. I hired someone off of a author resource called reedsy.com, Reedsy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I use
Yeah,
Reezy. Yeah, okay.
and she was able to. Uh, she took me through the process of seeking a traditional publishing deal, and through that process, I realized I didn't care to have one of those, and so at that point, I pivoted straight to self publishing, and then I hired a company. Um, that I think it was called selfpublishing.com at the time. I don't know what it's called now. I think it went through some sort of change, but and they helped me. They helped me. They hooked me up with an editor. So I went through a round of professional editing, and which I had to do a little fixing in there. It was important for me to write it the way that I spoke it, in my speaking language, not in my writing language. And so there was a few things, punctuation in particular, that had to be negotiated. And but then I had to re-record the audio book, and so I did all that. The selfpublishing.com people helped me package it. I articulated what I wanted the cover to look like, and they knocked it out of the park for me. I couldn't have been happier with the way that turned out. Um, and so they took me all the way through the actual release of the book, and then I've been trying to figure out exactly how do I market this thing. Um, I'm not exactly, I don't have the exact right skills to market it as heavily as I'd like to. Um, but I've been working on those skills and building my network of people that can. So hopefully I can get more to that, reaching out to people in the very near future.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that down the line too.
Okay.
But uh, you wrote about gaining godlike control over your own mental health and relationships. What did that look like in day-to-day life?
Um, at the very base of that tree is recognizing that I'm an animal, and that as an animal, I have two motivations: to survive and reproduce. And I have two tools that are instinct and emotion. And I have five biological senses to interpret my environment. And I bring information in through those senses from my environment, threats, rewards, stimulus, depressive elements, whatever the case may be. And recognizing that I'm an animal and I can do things about that. I can humanly move the animal around when it needs to. If I'm godlike control over my mental health. I recently went through a breakup. When I hit the road back in 21, the relationship that I was in wasn't going to sustain itself because it wasn't her life plan for me to be gone all the time. And she respected me and loved me enough to let me do it, and I respected her and loved her enough to let her go so that she could find her version of happiness. Um, I was able to navigate that decoupling, that untangling, she and I both, and keep our love and respect for each other intact and continue to want the best for one another, even though we weren't dating anymore. Um, I've had several other instances where I had every right to be pissed off at whoever or whatever was egregiously offending, but recognizing that I'm an animal and I'm about to get a dump of chemicals because this person is in my space or has trespassed against me. I'll give you one example. I have a cousin down here, a first cousin that I grew up with, who succumbed to the temptation of drugs in rural Alabama. That happens quite a bit these days. Methamphetamine and fentanyl have ruined a lot of lives in these parts, and I had a cousin who fell victim to it. And there was one night standing in my grandmother's kitchen. I'm actually at my grandmother's house right now. When I come to Alabama, I try to stay with her to maximize the time that I get with her. Um, and I saw photographic evidence one night that this cousin had stolen directly from me. And I'm standing in my grandmother's kitchen. My grandmother is next to me, and two of my aunts are there. And I see photographic evidence that he has stolen from me. And I felt it coming, man. I felt it bubbling up my spine, my shoulders broadened, my breath got deep, and I was what the animal in me wanted to do was go grab him by the throat and squeeze him till he stopped squirming. Um, but about that time, I'm in the middle of a full blown surge of adrenaline, and my like my late 80s grandmother put her arm around my waist. I guess she could see me having this reaction. And my fragile little grandmother puts her arm around my waist. And then that moment, I recognized I'm about to have an animal reaction. The chemicals are coming. There's nothing I can do about it. My grandmother slips her arm around my waist. I slipped my arm over her shoulders and I was able to breathe through those chemicals. Because what I wanted to do was flip over the table and run out, saying a string of cuss words and go find that dude, right? But as it was, had I done that, I would have scared these women that are extremely important in my life. I would have scared them and they wouldn't have been able to trust me as far as they can trust me now because they would have seen rage out of me and it would have given them the tiniest hint that I was capable of that, you know? And then once I found him, I would have done some things that probably would have wound me up in jail. And that doesn't improve anybody's life. And so being able to recognize that this is coming, I'm in control of it. I'm humanly in control of this animal. You're talking about jerking the leash and holding pressure on it. That's exactly what I did. I knew it was coming. I knew what I was being motivated to do, and was able to control myself and breathe through it until the chemicals subsided. And then I could just go outsmart this dude. You know what I mean? And there was that. There was the navigation of the breakup. There was the understanding that it wasn't personal. That she did still, in fact, love me, but this me being gone 300 days out of the year was not going to be good for the peace of for her inner peace that she was so desperately seeking, and I was going to be an impediment to that. And so the best way I can love this girl is to move out of her way and let her find the specific brand of happiness she's looking for. So that and it was painful in the moment, you know. There was days of sadness, but I was able to recognize myself as an animal having these emotions based on the things in my environment, and I was able to remind myself that this is what needs to happen. This I'm not going to feel this way forever because time is not linear. It doesn't have to be linear. You can use it in an abstract form. You can imagine a future. You can remember the past. You know what I mean? And so, using those upper level tools that only the human has access to, um, time and reason and logic and language and things of those nature, I was able to move through that without. I'll be square with you, man. 2 weeks after we separated, she was already seeing someone else, and that sounds like an egregious offense. But I knew that. I knew that was what was coming because I knew that that animal doesn't like to be by herself. And I know that she's beautiful. She's never going to be alone for longer than she cares to be. And so I was able to see that and understand that it wasn't an offense towards me. It was always going to be that way.
Okay. All right.
So there's just some examples, man. I can we can go deeper if you like to. But
Well, no, you see, because a lot of the things that you mentioned, I feel that, well, I know that, I've been through them, and I am comparing the human animal theory that you're talking about and practicing to the animal experience that I experienced being incarcerated, being a soldier, coming back, being incarcerated again, having to go through, that, that pack attitude where, you have to be, a leader of the pack or else you're nothing but sniffing asses. You understand what I'm saying?
right, right,
Yeah. Because we're talking about you, not me, but I'm just looking at the way that things, for instance, I mentioned anger management. Well, when the first couple of years that I came back home, anger management to me was meant that I was weak. I had to go and talk to somebody, like,
right.
I wasn't, that alpha dog that that's settles everything. But as time goes on, and now as I say, sometimes I go back, to take a class to sharpen my tools because I can feel, that I'm getting close to that edge. So it's also much different the way that society accepts you and looks at you through a different type of lens. But I do want to go on here because you mentioned also that you have tools and motivations. Can you give us an example of how each tool set, you know, helps you, diffuse those, those moments when, as you say, because if you went through with that action, then they would have seen a side of you that you did not want to expose to those that are close to you. That's not how you want
Right.
them to see you.
Right. Um, so on the animal side, there are only two tools that push the animal forward, and that's instinct and emotion. Um, like I said, we have our biological senses that pull in information, and if we smell something good cooking in the kitchen, that's a biological sense coming in, and all of a sudden hey, I'm a little hungry. That's the animal responding to its environment. Um, and so it's going to give me an emotion, and that is my propulsion system for the animal. um, on the human side, though, uh, the human has higher functioning tools available, like time in an abstract form, reason and logic, um, morality. I'm struggling to think at the moment. Several of those tools. Language is another big tool that animals can't. They can't speak, and a lot of times we'll say we'll have a feeling that we can't articulate. And that's the animal trying to talk to us. And if we take that on out, um, sometimes what I feel is not the right way forward. Sometimes what I feel is most definitely the right way forward, and it's just about knowing which of the two that is. You know what I mean? Um, I want to speak more on the tools. I'm trying to figure out where to catch it from. I took a couple notes, man. By the way, man, great questions. I've never had anybody send me questions prior to one before, but I read them. Ordinarily, I just jump on with somebody and we just go with it, But I read those questions and I thought, man, this is good for me to have to articulate. Um, let's see. I took a few notes because I didn't want to leave anything out. The motivations. So tools and motivations kind of going hand in hand. The motivations, like I said, the animal has two jobs, and that's just to survive and reproduce. And pretty much everything we do is based on those two things. And when I stop and think about how many of us have, that's all we've done with our life is survived and reproduced. You know, that's the default setting, I think, is to grow up and have kids. And I don't think there's anything in the world wrong with that. Um, but I also think that doesn't have to be the limit. That doesn't have to be our only contribution to the world. Um, the those chemicals that come from those emotions, man, they're powerful, and they can be totally intoxicating. That falling in love high, man, that's moved all of us to a space we probably didn't need to be in some instance or another. And
Oh,
it's
I mean, having that sense of being part of the pack hierarchy. I mean,
Yeah.
you know
And that's usually directly related to how desirable you are to the opposite sex. As a
precisely,
man, at least, you know what I
precisely.
mean?
You
The
got to
female
have that
experience a little
nice
different.
car, that gift of gab. You
Right.
know,
And the respect of all the other pack animals around you, you know what I mean?
right?
If these other animals respect you for your strength, then this female animal can respect you for that strength and feel safe in your presence. You know what I mean?
Of
So
course.
it's funny how directly related that is, um but go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off on that one.
No, no. I mean, it's also like where you see I might this might be a chauvinistic statement. I don't know, but where you see women attracted to bad boys.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Those
because
bad boys, they have a
the-
they have that confidence
right,
that
that
is
sense of
intoxicating. Yeah.
power that
Right. Right.
she feels protected. She doesn't
That's right. And some of those females, that's all they've ever known were bad boys. So they don't even they don't know the opposite side of that coin, and so they have no idea that that exists. They have no idea that that's a different experience in this life. And so they've been trained as they were growing up by the animals around them. And sometimes if that bad actor was especially kind to them, then they might see a different side of that bad actor that than somebody that was in direct competition with that bad boy, um, from another pack or whatever. You know what I mean?
So now, another thing that you were talking about is training the beast. You advocate tightening the leash, kind of letting it roam, even dancing with it. What's your favorite training exercise for listeners to try?
Well, the first step is recognizing that the animal is there for sure, and then understanding certain things about that animal. What its particular motivations are. Um, Also understanding that in any of us that have pets know that if we never let that pet outside to run around and get some exercise and some sunlight, and we feed it crap food, eventually that dog is going to become unhealthy, or that pet's going to become unhealthy, overweight, depressed, all these things. And so it's important to know that the animal in us needs certain things to exercise that animal inside of us, whether it be competition or just sport in general, or nature, or whatever the case may be. So understand that there's an animal there that you have to serve. The second thing is, when you can recognize that that animal is there. One thing from my own personal life, occasionally, just given circumstances, if there's no natural reward out there progress, or relationship deepening, or something to that effect. If the environment gets a little stagnant from time to time, I'll even start feeling just that emotional funk start to come on, where the motivation is down and nothing sounds good, and just everything's just kind of blah. It's a, uh, you know, 80s rom-coms would probably call that a case of the Mondays. You can If you sit in that emotion for too long, it can start to have a more prolonged effect. Maybe that's the tip of the hole that is depression. Too many of those days in a row, and that digs you deeper into it. So if I feel that start to come on, the first thing I do is grab a broom, because environment is paramount in my behavior. My environment is going to produce a lot of my behavior without me even understanding it. So the first thing I do is I grab a broom and I sweep the floor. And that little bit of environmental tweak, that little bit of doing something that is kind to the animal by improving my environment, gives me just a little hit of that good chemical, that dopamine. You know what I mean? And that's going to spark the next thing. And then maybe I clean my bathroom, or whatever the case may be. Or then, I go check the mail, then I cut the grass, whatever chores that I have to do, whatever environmental uh, troubles I'm having. Like for instance, if I wore my boots out the other night and I came in and I took them off and I left them by the door and I didn't put them in their place, now I have to walk around them, and I do because it's just the tiniest little inconvenience. But a bunch of those tiny inconveniences can add up, and so I put the boots away. I clean my bathroom, whatever the case may be. And then that little bit of momentum leads me to the next bit of momentum, leads me to the next bit, to the next bit. And all of a sudden, I've had a really productive day that I can feel good about. And so I stack a bunch of those days on top of each other. And I don't know what the opposite of depression is. I would have to think about what term we could use for that. But that sends me up the ladder, the emotional ladder, more towards that euphoric place rather than that depressive place. And so that's the first thing to understand, is that I am an animal and I can do something about that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is well, I kind of mentioned it already, to understand that the animal needs certain things. The animal needs sunlight and exercise and work. We're a working animal, and if we're not doing something, whether it's washing a load of clothes, or whether it's cultivating our own food in the field, or hunting the animal we're going to eat, that part of us is in there and it exists. And if we don't serve it, it's gonna have an adverse effect. It's gonna turn to violence. It's gonna turn to apathy. It's gonna turn to depression. It's gonna turn to something. So let's care for that inner animal. Um, and I guess the third thing would be the same way we train any other animal, by repetition. We start, here's an example from my life that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I'll go to the gym and I'll get good at going to the gym, and then something will happen in my, like, I'll get to go to Europe for a couple weeks, throws me off my routine. I come back to the States and it takes me 3 months to get my butt back in the gym because I broke the habit. You know what I mean? And so there are days where I know I need to restart this habit, but the animal in me is fighting it because the animal doesn't want to go do that work. That's work. I'm going to break a sweat, and I could just sit here and watch TV or whatever the case may be. And so I'll make a deal with myself. I'll say, just drive to the gym, just drive there. You don't have to go in, just drive there. So I drive there, and I know that if I use the gas to get there, I'm going to make myself go in, because otherwise I've just wasted all this time. And so then I get that one gym in, then maybe I get another one. And then after that repetition, I start to feel less well if I don't go. I start to crave it. You know what I mean? So repetition is a good way to train the animal. And so whatever it is you need to be doing, and you need to do it, just start with those small steps towards that space, and repeat them and repeat them and repeat them until they become a subconscious behavior. The first time you throw a tennis ball to your dog, it might chase it instinctively, but it doesn't know to bring it back. So it finally does, and you reward it, and then you do it again, and you reward it, and eventually it understands, I'm supposed to do this thing because good things happen to me when I do it. And so it's very similar to throwing yourself a tennis ball.
Okay. Starting it kind of goes right back to that first story that you were talking about with Cody. So, uh, so how does forgiving the animal side unlock, as you put it, and I'm going to use your quotes here, effortlessly curated inner peace? What does? How did you come up with that phrase, and what did it mean in that context?
In this particular context here, when I think back over my life and some dumb things that I've done, whether it be choices that I made, choices that I didn't make that I should have made, um, relationships that I ended, relationships that I should have worked a little harder for, that I sabotaged, or whatever the case may be, things I didn't say that I should have, things I did say that I shouldn't have, all those things. I look back and I realized that I was an animal acting in an environment, responding to my environment. And before I became aware that I was an animal, I didn't have that human governing switch, that could keep me on a righteous path. Uh, I've done some things that, as we all have, that should have gotten a shot in the back. You know what I mean? And I've wronged people that I didn't mean to wrong. I love people that I never should have tried to love and got hurt in the process. And understanding that those emotions were powerful and that was what was guiding me. And even though I knew better when now that I think about it, and I can honestly say that I should have known better, but I didn't, because those emotions, they felt so right in those moments. Even if they were wrong, they felt right. And so understanding that I wasn't consciously navigating with higher functioning, with human tools, with logic, that didn't make any damn sense, and I did it anyway. um, I wasn't looking at consequences, because consequences are a function of time. All those things, understanding that I was subconsciously moving through my environment, helps me way better be able to forgive myself for the mistakes that I've made, and forgive others for the mistakes they've made that I've had to suffer from. Forgiving people for treating me a certain way when they didn't mean to treat me that way. They were just already mad, or saying something that really hurt my feelings. They didn't mean that. They just knew they would hurt me, and they were already mad. Maybe I was even the source of that anger, because I stepped on some toes or didn't identify a blind spot. And so understanding that myself and everyone else that hasn't had that aha moment and peeled away a couple of layers of fuzz from the reality to really see what's happening there, it's just okay, because we were doing the best we could given the tools we were using. And that gives me the space to be kind to my past self, and to be kind to others, and to not be offended by every little thing, to laugh at myself when I make a mistake. I've done some things since I've had this revelation that should have embarrassed the crap out of me. Maybe I thought something was true that wasn't true, and it was pointed out, and I thought, or uh, maybe I've misunderstood, or I've said something or something like that should have really embarrassed me. It's just over when somebody else, one of my friends, busts my balls in front of people. It's just it. I can just add to the ridiculousness of it now, because it's funny. It doesn't have to be an offense, and just things of that nature. Um, I my dad was pretty well known in the community. He had two boys that played baseball. Me and my brother were big baseball players growing up, and I was playing in the band and that sort of thing. And so my family has always been interacting at the ballparks and stuff like that. And but I saw my dad never live up to his potential. I knew that he loved me, and that's a blessing I'll never discount him for. Um, he had my back, no matter if I was right or wrong. But I saw him give up on some things in his life that would have brought him great joy, and probably would have set our family up for a more comfortable existence. And I'm able to forgive him, because I understand with the animal that fear is the strongest motivation. Fear is going to move us before anything else outside of hunger. And most of us aren't hungry anymore. So fear is going to be the jet fuel and the jet engine most of the time. And I could see what he was afraid of, and where he found his rewards in this life, and the blind spots that he must have had because of that fear. And I can forgive him for not pushing those boundaries that I wish that he would have, and maybe elevate our entire family. And I can see that the strengths that he had, he gave to me, and that the weaknesses he had, uh, I was able to turn those into strengths. And so it become a, instead of being angry is too strong of a word, disappointed, maybe something with my father and the heights that he reached for in this life. I can be gracious for the things that he did give me that you can't buy with money.
Yeah, that's
So
that's definitely true. Uh, What are three concrete tools that you'd hand someone today who's feeling overwhelmed by anxiety and addiction, or maybe just societal pressure?
Yeah. Um, the first tool, and I use this. It's in the book, and I extrapolate on it quite a bit. But I have a little equation that I remember about me being an animal and about us being animals, and that is our environment plus our belief system is going to be our behavior. What we believe we carry around with us, and whatever our environment presents to us, we're going to interact with that environment based on that belief. So environment plus belief system equals behavior. And if you can understand that, and you can see that, and don't trust me, do the experiment yourself. Think about it in your own life, think about it in the lives of your loved ones that you have a front row seat to. um, so understanding that that equation exists, you can manipulate your environment, and you can disassemble and reassemble your belief system. You have to do that with evidence. You can't do it just based on a whim or an emotional motivation to. But you can do an experiment to see if this is actually true in your life, in your experience, or if it's not. So the first would be understanding that your environment is something that surrounds you. It's not something that happens to you. Doesn't have to be something that happens to you, that you can affect your environment. The second thing is to try to do something about that environment. If there are nuisances and annoyances and just general pain in that environment, try to do something to elevate it. Whether it is as simple as clean your room, like Jordan Peterson would say, or something, and maybe it's a geographical thing, and if you have the means to move from there, then maybe you should. Like a lot of the addiction treatment that I see going on, that person may successfully come off that drug for a minute, but if they go back into the same environment, surrounded by the same animals, they're probably going to relapse. And so that's a little insight just to how important environment is. And we can design that environment to, some of us to great extent, some of us to little extent, but anything we can do to improve that environment is going to improve the homeostasis of that. You think about your pet dog. If you have him sleeping outside every day, he's going to, in the heat and the rain and the whatever the case may be, he's going to be one animal. But if he's sleeping inside in the air conditioning on a comfortable couch, he's going to be a different animal. Take away his food, and he's going to get snappy at some point. But feed him well, and he's going to love you forever. So that there's just some examples of how environment affects our behavior and the design of that environment. Just to try to be proactive to it versus reactive. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right.
That's a
Yeah,
big key. Proactive versus reactive.
yeah. That's
Um,
that's one that's another thing that they teach you in anger management. Also, it's one of the tools that that you have at your disposal.
mhm.
Because otherwise, that animal part of you, like you said, you snarled at me, I'm going to snarl back.
Right, right,
You invade my space. There's consequences, rather than the fact that maybe we can share that space for a particular moment.
right,
Doesn't have to be doesn't have to be forever, but for that particular moment, that's what
right,
works.
right. And maybe if you can take that idea far enough, maybe there's some sort of benefit you can each gain from having each other, at least in a similar space. Maybe not the exact space, but similar. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right. You know. Uh, so, mental health for someone that's battling depression or addiction. What's the first step on the trail to reconciling with their inner animal? Because that's kind of who you're feeding. What I mean, you get once you get to that point, it's not about doing the things that are good for you. It's about doing things that make you feel good.
Right. That person that's struggling with depression in particular, uh, that nagging feeling that you have, that hopelessness and helplessness, that's the animal trying to tell you, or the animal doesn't have reach of language. The animal can't, it can't grasp language. It can only speak to you in feelings and chemicals, basically. Um, and so understand that negative feeling that you're dealing with. And I went to that space after that breakup that I was telling you about. I'd never been there before, but all of a sudden, I could see that space as real. I thought it was just weakness or whatever the case may be, until I had to go see it for myself. And now I understand that grip, that sinkhole that is depression. Once it gets a little hold on you, it doesn't want to let you go. So understand that first and foremost is that, you know you're in a hole now, and you're going to have to stop digging first, and then you're going to have to figure out ways to crawl out of that space. And the way that I have found to do it is, the way that I crawled out was, creating value for myself, redesigning my environment, find some mission, find some purpose in that. Uh, One thing that is a really big tool that I like to use, and I see some other literature and stuff on it, is service. Serving other people, I think, is the quickest way back to some non-depressive state. You know what I mean? It's hard to feel bad about yourself when you're giving some sort of gift of service to someone else. Um, Understand that as many people that you may have in your life that gather around that hole that you're in and stick their hand down to try to pull you out, they're never going to be able to pull you out until you start digging your feet in and trying to come out too.
Yeah,
If
you have
if
to,
you're
you have
if
to
I'm
reach your hand up.
right, if I'm not helping myself, there is no one else that can help me,
Yeah,
as bad as they want to try. And so understand also that for the animal, it's a chemical thing. These chemicals, and sometimes, I'm sure in a percentage of cases, then it's going to be an absolute chemical thing. There's an imbalance going on. There's a misfiring of this hormone, or a misfiring of that one, or maybe they're not being mixed at the right ratio, or whatever the case may be. So take into account modern medicine for sure. But it seems to me, from what I see and hear, and the people that I've talked to thus far in my journey, the pharmaceutical route can help, but it seems to be an emotional band-aid rather than a fix. It can help you. It can numb those negative feelings for a little bit, to kind of get you back to level, maybe. And in those spaces, really reach for the sky there. um, because it seems to me eventually those benefits are going to wear off, or at least tame themselves over a period of time, and you may not see the benefit from those pills once the animal you are gets used to taking them.
right, right.
So I think the biggest takeaway is, if you're fortunate enough to have somebody in your life willing to help you out of that space, then please let them help you.
Yeah. Be willing to accept help.
Right. And
That was one of my biggest obstacles when I was younger.
yeah,
Feeling that I could do it myself. Like I said,
right.
going to someone else, especially another man, was a sign of weakness. You
Right,
just couldn't
depending on who
do
you are as an animal, to
that.
show any sort of vulnerability is a bad thing,
Right,
because
right.
that can get you exploited quickly.
Yeah, and especially if you're dealing within, like, as I said, an institutional type of environment,
Oh, I can
where,
only imagine your experience, brother.
you know, I spent after I came back from Vietnam, I spent a total of a little over 12 years, not consecutively, but there was also, like you said, that need to want to change at that particular time. Uh, you know, I felt that I had control of my environment. I was an alpha dog, and living off that power, was that fed that inner animal, and
Right,
as long as that inner animal stayed fed, there was no need to change my environment.
right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in those environments, uh, and it doesn't have to be just in an incarceration environment, but in several environments that we can find ourselves in the world, when you don't have much of anything, that respect that you're after becomes the currency.
Precisely,
Yeah.
precisely, precisely. So, if more of us awaken to this perspective, what positive uh, results do you foresee in the workplace, in schools, uh, let's say in our social environment rather than politics?
In the social environment, let's see where to begin. uh, there, I think most people would admit there's more division in our society now than there has been in a long time. The vitriolic display, the lashing back and forth of left versus right, and this versus that, and then the tendency to other individuals and all that sort of thing. And when I recognize that someone else, their life experience has trained them a certain kind of animal, and my life experience has trained me as a certain kind of animal, and if my life experience was their life experience, it would have trained me exactly. You know what I'm saying. um,
Yes, yes, I do.
it's difficult to articulate sometimes, but uh, we all have a belief system that life has shown us to be true up until this point. And that, knowing that everyone is just, we're all walking around bumping into things and deciding whether or not we're going to run from it or chase it or bark at it or whatever the case may be. That's mostly what life is these days, for us and as a society. um, and knowing that the positive and the negative emotions that we experience as we're growing up through prepubescence from childhood to adolescence into young adulthood and then into adulthood, those experiences shape what we believe to be true about the world. And just because person A believes this to be true and B believes the opposite of that to be true, they can both be right depending on their experience that they've had in this world so far. Um, and some things that are important to one person may not be important to the other. Most things that one person may be afraid of, if someone is afraid of, one person is afraid of transsexuals, and another person is afraid that transsexuals will never experience liberty and justice in this country of ours, then those are two different motivations, and those two people are probably going to bark at each other. But if I know what fear is pushing this person and what fear is pushing this person, maybe I can facilitate some conversation between the two of them to show them where they line up versus them focusing on where they absolutely do not line up. um,
Right, what they have in common rather
right.
than their differences.
Right. And why maybe you don't need to be so afraid of this, or maybe why you should be a little more afraid of that. You know what I mean? And the way that I'm able to do that in my interactions is because I understand that I'm an animal, and that animal, you know, can be triggered by its environment. Then I disengage that switch, and I can go right into that toxic place with someone, and instead of attacking them for being toxic. You shouldn't be that way. Why do you think this way? You're an idiot. You're stupid, all that sort of thing. I can go in there and understand their point of view and then look for ways to gently coach them back out. Maybe it's a piece of cheese or maybe it's a tennis ball. I don't know,
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking, but I can go into that space with them and meet them where they are and then make suggest questions or question things myself. Instead of one of the things I like to say, like to my girl, if she and I aren't seeing eye to eye, instead of saying, "Well, I think that's stupid," the way you think is dumb, and I don't have to think that way. I tell her, "Help me understand," and that spurs her to talk about it more. And one of two things is going to happen: either she is going to help me understand, or through talking it out and trying to articulate whatever it is she's upset about, or whatever the case may be, she may reveal to herself why it's not worth it to be upset, or where there was a miscommunication that maybe I'm at fault for, or maybe she's at fault for. But it allows us to get back on the same page without having to fight about it. And then maybe I say something that she can never recover from, or she says something that I can never recover from. I just tell her, help me understand. And I think that if more people could understand that, you know this mad person is just having an animal reaction. They really don't mean what they're saying. They're not, all the Karens of the world. That's one of the funny things that I see on the internet. These people that are, I see, a 65-year-old woman mad as hell at a 25-year-old grown man, and coming up threatening that person, and that doesn't make any sense. That's, you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation because you're mad. Um,
It's
and
that animal in you, I mean,
right,
like, because I found it, especially when I first started podcasting, if I had someone on that had a different opinion, it was immediately, that, I'm that attack dog. I'm on the offense, like you said, uh, why are you so stupid?
yeah,
Why do and it did not have, it defeated the purpose of me having a podcast, and I had to learn that I had to learn to set that animal aside, and say, okay, like, let's, I go back to, my debating skills, uh, and I mean, there are so many tools that you can have today. Acupuncture. I mean, there are all types of, different types of things that you can go into for your mental, as well as your physical health.
right.
So, but music meets theory here. As a musician, have you ever written a song or improvised on stage, maybe inspired directly by an insight from your own human animal journey?
Yeah, I'm sure there are countless examples, but when I read that question, I just started smiling because I wrote a song. I guess it, so I had this revelation in late 2017, early 2018, something around there. And in 2020, before I wrote the book, I wrote a song that I call Slip the Chain. And the lyric to that, I don't have it released yet. I've recorded a demo, but I haven't. There's an album in the works, but it's still a little ways out. It says, the lyric to it says, "There's a chain around your neck to ensure that you behave." No, there's a chain around your neck, a stake buried in the ground, put there to keep you in, designed to hold you down. There's a chain around your neck to ensure that you behave, there to cage the animal, there to stop escape. And then the chorus says, keep on barking at the dark, get comfortable all caged in, die right in the yard, never know beyond the fence. Let it tighten around the neck, defining your domain, keep settling for the stretch or slip the chain. That's the through the first chorus there. And it's directly saying, hey, free yourself, you know, that that prison that we're in, it's invisible. We don't have to be. We think there's a fence there, but it's not there. And as long as they can keep us in the yard, they can control us. You know, they being the elites, the powers that be, however you want to define that, the governing body of whatever you know, he who makes the laws, I guess. And so there is one that is directly associated with human animal theory, and it's called "Slip the Chain." I hope that I can get that song out by the end of the year. That's my goal anyway. It says the bridge is really interesting in that song. I'm real proud of it. It says, tethered to the herd, stacked into the stalls, blinded by the words written on the walls. Keep howling at the moon, pounding your fist into your skin until the man outruns the beast will run the man.
It's very deep. A lot of
Thank you, man.
people, yeah, but like I said, a lot of people, until you have lived it, you really don't understand.
That's right. I had to
The,
live it myself.
yeah, I mean, so there are some lessons, that can't be taught, just taught in theory. There are some
Right.
things that have to be experienced. So, what's next for you now that you published the book? Are you going to do workshops? Do you plan to follow up a new album? What's your plans here?
I do have a new album in the works. While I'm out supporting my good buddy, my artist friend, I'm still working on my own music as well. It's something that I'll never be able to stop. It's just who I
I
am,
think all
you know.
musicians do that.
Yeah, it soothes a part of the animal that I am that I don't think I could soothe any other way. Um, so there's that new album. I do have a second edition, a second book in this on this journey. I don't know what it's going to be called yet, but it's I've got some chapters outlined where I just want to take different aspects of our society and let's look at it through this human animal lens. You know, one of the ideas is alcoholism, one is religion, things of that nature, and trying to use that human animal perspective to try to make some more sense out of it, to figure if we can maybe find a better way to deal with it, so that we can pull more people out of those spaces and back into some healthy living. I've thought about doing a workbook to try to help people dig down to their own inner animal, to understand who the animals were that came before them and what the pressures were on the family and how that trained those animals, and what to be afraid of and what to believe, and all these sorts of things, to maybe help release some generational curses that are passed down from generation to generation. Um, and I want to get to a space where I can have the tiniest bit of infrastructure so that I can offer some one-on-one, I guess you'd call it coaching, to help people who are struggling with whatever they may be struggling in their life, try to get some objective sense about it and understand how, from a human animal perspective, how they can help their own situation, and learn to navigate more precisely, and not get blown off their own path just because they encountered some wild animal or emotional tornado in their path, you know. So that's what I hope to do. Time is of the essence these days, and uh, I have to figure out how to balance these things with balancing my responsibility on these tours and stuff like that. But it's a fun puzzle to try to put together. And I'm making progress towards those things. It's just not going quite as quickly as I would like for it to.
Yeah, that's usually how
No,
time and technology stops for no
that's right.
one.
That's
Uh,
absolutely right. There's
so,
no throttle. There's no reverse. There's only steering.
if it goes too fast, it runs off the tracks, and you have to start over. I mean,
That's
that's
right.
just the way it is. So, if our listeners could take away one nugget from tracking our inner animal, I believe that's the name of your book, right?
Right. Tracking our inner animal.
Yeah. What would you most want that nugget to be?
I thought about this one for a while, and it's tough to distill it down to one. But I think if you'll let me do an honorable mention, I think I can do it. I
Hey,
mentioned it earlier.
do it. You
The equation,
know,
um, the environment plus belief system equals behavior. That's one thing to really that can really lead to it's a very good diagnostic tool in your own life, in my own life, in your own life. If you can see that equation, and understand the pressures your environment puts on you, and because of your belief system, the way you believe a certain way, it's going to manipulate your behavior. And so to be able to tweak your behavior will eventually tweak your belief system. To be able to tweak your environment might tweak your belief system that tweaks your behavior. So there's room to adjust the parameters and the metrics in there if you can look at it from an equation standpoint. That's one big thing. It helps me diagnose why I do the things that I do and why I feel the way that I feel, even if I can't quite articulate it. By looking back at that equation, maybe I start to consciously see the things that are pressing on me when before I didn't see them. The other thing that I think is important that I really think society could benefit from is I don't think that I'm really spitting out anything new here. I think that I've kind of realized it in a way and sort of through a lens that I can articulate that might can amplify the message to other people that couldn't receive it from scientific type writing and books. I think that I've put it in a language that I can most definitely understand better, and I think I can reach to more people because of that. I'm not sure who in our society knows these sorts of things already and who hasn't weaponized it. Um, and so I would like for me to remember and everyone else to understand that the animal is hackable. We can hack it for good. Nefarious powers can hack it for bad, and I see this in social media and the corporate media, the propaganda that we're being fed right now. Unfortunately, rage bait and negative type of things spur the most interaction because we bark louder at things that we don't like or things that scare us. And so these images, this digital diet that we consume is really bad for that inner animal more often than not. So if the powers that be, if the news media, if social media, if all those things can hack the animal that we are and hurt us in this direction or hurt us in this direction, it's better that we learn to hack ourselves than to be hacked by those that want to use us as a society for political gains or monetary gains or whatever the case may be. So it's better that we learn how we can be hacked and do the hacking ourselves for our own benefit than to leave it to our environment itself to manipulate the animal that we are into really negative vitriolic states where all we can do is sit on the internet and bark all day.
yeah, yeah. I feel you there. I feel sometimes that I spend much too much time arguing uh, instead of trying to. Uh, I feed that animal instinct to defend my territory, to uh, uh, let everyone know that I'm the big dog, rather than like you say, take them aside and and say, well, okay, maybe we don't agree on this, but let's go have a drink of water and maybe we can discuss it
Yeah.
afterwards.
One thing that I like to do is just ask questions. If I disagree with someone, then I try to make them explain their argument, how they came to that space that maybe we don't see eye to eye on. And like I said, either they're going to show me some things that make me reevaluate my position, or I'm going to have them question their logic so hard that they reevaluate the way they see things. And instead of weapons, I try to use examples. One piece of language that works really well for me, and please use it if you come into a situation where you can, is instead of saying, something to the effect of, I don't understand this, or I don't see how you can be so dumb that you can't see this. I'll say, one thing that I can't quite square is this. And then I have my partner in this conversation trying to figure out a way to square that, to make it make sense, to make it a fair deal, or whatever the case may be. And if I can't square it, chances are they can't either. Or if they can, then they show me how it's done, and I can walk away feeling like I got a fair shake. So there's ways to engage in conversation without causing that other animal to need to defend itself. Because once those dukes go up, man, all logic is out the window. You're just trying to defend yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
of
I'll
course.
tell you, James, one of the things in my life that what I've found is a true show of strength. It, let's talk about it in animal terms. There's a dog walking down an alley, and he doesn't know it, but he's getting real close to this other dog's yard. And this dog in the yard behind the fence sees it and runs up to the fence and starts raising hell, barking at this dog that's walking down the alley. The real show of strength is for that dog in the alley to see that barking dog and to be unbothered and unpushed by it. You know
Keep
what I'm
walking.
saying?
Keep
The
walking.
the weak animal is going to run up there and try to bark back at that dog, and next thing you know, you got two dogs raising hell at each other.
They
Um,
can't get to each other.
right.
They're
The real
separate.
show the real show of strength is to be unaffected by that barking dog, and then possibly even calm the nerves of that barking dog. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and
Uh,
I see that in you, brother. I know that you're asking yourself questions, and you're reflecting, and all those things, and trying to become a better version of who you already are. And I think you have the intellectual power to do exactly that, man, and to change other people's lives as well.
well, that's what I feel at this point in my life, that I have to give back. It, it's like, as I know I'm paraphrasing, but there's an old proverb: when the elder in the village dies, the whole library dies with him, a
All right.
whole generation of knowledge. And if you're not passing knowledge on to people such as you, then it's possible to receive uh, knowledge from a person, even though we're separated by years, because I find uh, human theory and human interaction has changed even more, uh, because now we are bombarded by technology and everyone's opinion without having to have facts. One of the most interesting things that I point to is the way that the Vietnam War was covered. Before Tet, it was not brought into the American home every night. You could not actually see the brutality of war and men acting, being, so inhumane to each other. But when people see things that they don't understand, or that that they can't quite uh, have within their grasp, they tend to fear it. Uh, which is the reason why I think that uh, we were treated much different when we came home than people now, because we were animals. and people did not want to give us, I can't. Maybe we needed our belly rubbed or whatever, but to be labeled as an animal, you sometimes want to live up to that label.
Right. Right.
If
If
I,
you're
if
gonna
I,
treat me like one, then watch this type of thing.
right, right,
Yeah.
which is why like I said, I spent 12 years of my life, uh, incarcerated. But it also led me, once I got out, it also led me to, to realize, like, this is not the place where I want to die. This is not where I want to make my last stand. There are other things that I can do, and I can do them just as well. So I I understand. As a matter of fact, you have made me understand more about that inner animal and why sometimes I need to go back to anger management or to use tools of that nature because instinct also plays a part in this. So tell us, you mentioned that you recorded your book, that you've written it.
Right.
Is there anywhere that we can have access to it?
Sure.
Can
It's available on Amazon. Just type "tracking our inner animal" into the search bar there, and it should take you right to it. There's not much named similarly in the Amazon ecosphere, and the audio version is on Audible. So if you'd like, I'll read it right to you.
oh, hey,
Because I did do the recording myself. That was very good.
I've got 11 Audible credits. So
Well,
after
sweet, sweet.
this, I have nine. Or at least down to 10. But I think there's a 2-for-1 sale. But I'll definitely go and check out your book, and maybe we could get together once again,
Yeah,
and
man.
maybe have another interaction.
I
Maybe
would I would love to talk to you after you soak up the entirety of the book and have that conversation with you.
all right.
So you just let me know, man, and we'll schedule it. It may take me a minute just because I'm constantly going, but you let me know and we'll do another one.
I will definitely do that. I will make sure that I get on Audible right after this and check it out. And yes, maybe after you come back off the tour this time, just you know, uh, uh, let me know when you're home and have time, and we can talk, man.
All right.
You know,
Sounds good, brother. I appreciate you having me, man. It's been a,
I
been a real pleasure.
I appreciate you coming on the show, my man. I know I only asked you for 75 minutes of your time, but
I have no idea how long it's been. It feels
well,
like a couple of minutes.
well, hey, I'm glad you enjoyed coming on the show. I appreciate your time. And before you go, make sure that everybody knows where to get your book, and any other final thoughts that you have for our audience tonight.
All right. Just Amazon, just type in "tracking our inner animal," and then on Audible as well. Those are the two places. Or if I see you in person, a lot of times I'll have a copy or two on me. And on Instagram, my personal Instagram is Leslie Jackson Hall, spelled like you see it on your screen there. Leslie Jackson Hall on Instagram, and also there's a Human Animal Theory Instagram that I'm starting to build up and build up. So we can connect there as well.
Yeah, maybe I can put you in my business directory so that if I have some clients down that way, or just some people that want to talk. I have a lot of guys that are just coming from being incarcerated. Some of them for decades or longer, and you can imagine the transition trying to make these guys when they went in, we were still using analog, we were still dialing numbers, we had some of them had party lines, and now
Yeah, you're right.
a guy comes out and you give him this and he's like, what the but that's everything that you need,
Right.
any type of app that you need, I mean, and believe me, you have to be able to keep up with society. That's why I encourage a lot of people to read. If you can't read, get Audible, so you can
Right.
have someone read books to you. But you do need that knowledge. Uh, and once again, man, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you after
Yeah, man.
you read this book to me.
Yeah, we'll make that happen. I'll read it. I'll just put me in your ears, man. I'll read it right to you.
All right, sir. You
All
have
right,
a
brother.
great day. Stay safe on the road, and I look forward to not only talking to you but reading your next book.
All right. Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
All right, you have a great night, sir.
Thanks, man. You too.
Yeah. Oh man, I know my audience is used to me, going over, but I get involved with these conversations, and I think
Uh-oh.
I'm still here. Don't worry.
Okay, there we go.
uh, but tell us a little bit about that hat, man. I wanted to
Oh,
ask you about your hat there. Yeah.
this is a little deer hunting club that I belong to down here in Lower Alabama. We have a big cypress delta down here, and in 1949, my grandfather was one of the charting members of this hunting club where we hunt deer and wild pigs,
Okay.
squirrels and raccoons and stuff like that. And a friend of mine made us up some hats, and just happened to have it on, and it's my favorite hat. It fits me right, and all that sort. And plus, it's Tensall River, and that's a real nostalgic place for me. So
Oh yeah, hey, give them a plug too while we're here. I mean,
yeah,
why not, man?
I'll tell you, man, we've got down here in Lower Alabama the Mobile Tensall River Delta that flows into Mobile Bay, that flows into the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America now, I guess. We
I
we
don't
just
know.
we just call it the Gulf down here.
Yeah,
All the
there
locals, we
you
just
go.
refer to it as the Gulf. So five rivers into the bay, into the Gulf, and it's just we have one some of the I think we're the most biodiverse state in the United States, specifically because of this particular delta and the rivers that flow into it. And it's just it's called America's Amazon in some circles,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's just been a wonderful, wonderful place to be able to go and explore and play and observe. You know what I mean? So I feel very fortunate to have been gifted at such a young age by my grandfather and my father.
Now, are you guys losing land down there?
In what way?
Yeah, with the rainfall and
Oh,
the erosion
um,
and stuff like that.
for the most part, like as far as beaches go, they've got pretty much got beach restoration back down. They'll go in and dredge it out from a little ways out, pump it back up on the beach, and spread it out with bulldozers and whatnot, and then that'll get washed away, and then they'll replenish it. The delta itself, over a long enough period of time, just kind of rewires itself. You know, the river might cut
Yeah.
out this bank and then go through here or whatever. It's funny. I just through some discovery this past hunting season down here, we figured out where the river used to run millions and millions, however many years ago. But just the way the land goes, that pretty much proves that the riverbed used to run around this particular curve. But now that's just a swamp, and the river's way over here. So it's just awesome to think about how long it's been there, and the mysteries it must still hold. So
Yeah, yeah. All right, man. Well, let's get off there here. I know I probably kept you up a little bit longer than
oh man, I'll go out of
than.
my way for a good conversation like this.
All right. Well, hey, let's do it again, my man.
All right,
You have
brother.
a great night.
All right, sounds good, man. Thanks, James.
If you have any social media, you can stream it over to your social media. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook, and we're also on YouTube.
Okay.
So you can, if you have a site or anything, you can upload this directly to your site and play it.
All right. Well, I
So
appreciate that, man.